I think that's essentially, some of the questions I have written down here is just, how do I identify the right property to buy and how do I finance it, given my current situation, how do I get an upside, right, through
Right.
the process. I mean, and also my strategy is not necessarily to, I think that this is important for you to know. It's not to buy and then flip or whatever. It's just to buy and hold and,
Right.
and just keep adding properties. So, but yeah, with that, please, I think you have all of the right, uh, I guess, d- topics of discussion highlighted. So let's go
Yeah.
for it.
Okay. Ed, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think that's a good direction for the conversation.
Okay, fantastic. So I will tell you that my husband and I have been married 21 years, and we started buying investment properties 21 years ago. So we purchased our first house, and then because of the capital gains, if you live there 5 years, we'd live there 2 years, and then we'd rent it for 2 years, and in the fifth year we would sell it. And so we would, and then so when we went to turn it into a rental, we'd buy a second primary residence, and we made that cycle go. It was great. We were doing that in the Bay Area right up until about 2007. And then we had our last property was $1 million property, and on paper it was worth like $1.3 million or something like that. Um, and we had our renter in there, and we moved here to Colorado. And our renter at some point decided they didn't want to rent that expensive house anymore. And so I was flying back and forth trying to sell it. So there is absolutely a sweet spot or a limit to your exposure that I recommend you doing. On that home, we tried to sell it for a year. No one was buying that kind of a house, super big house on 2 acres with a view. And we decided that if it was going to cost us less than 6 months mortgage payments, we would just sell it for a loss and get out of it. So that is what we did there. So then fast forward, I was extremely gun shy about buying investment properties, but I knew it was really important. I have a previous degree was in IT, and so I have a master's degree in IT, and I had a little $40,000 401k from one of my jobs that was just kind of sitting there not doing anything. And I took some classes to teach me how to buy investment property with my IRA. So basically, since I was no longer with the company, it goes from a 401k to an IRA. And when it's an IRA, you can put it into a self-directed IRA. And the really super cool part about that whole system is that I have a lender that will loan to your IRA. And it's a 65% loan to value. So my first property was $80,000, and I had to come up with like $20,000 in my IRA. Um, and then they gave me the loan for the difference. So Mac, I had told you the other day that I'd received some good advice when my kids were first born about buying a property for each one of them. This was how I did that. So, I mean, it, most people don't have $20,000 or $30,000 laying around the house. I didn't either, but I had this IRA that wasn't doing anything. And so, First Bank gave me the loan. I think it was like 3.75% interest rate out of 15-year loan, and I paid it off in 2 or 3 because it was like super easy. So if you have money like that, that is the first place that I recommend to tap for your investment money. So there's that. But
So, yeah. What happens so when you use your IRA, is that as a collateral or is it the bank just takes that IRA money, right? So
no, they don't
it's
at
not
all.
invested, they don't, and it's still
So
invested into the market.
yeah, so it is considered a non-recourse loan. So the bank will still check your credit, but you personally do not actually sign on it. And so if for some reason that defaulted, yes, they would go after your IRA for whatever the difference is that they were defaulted on. Absolutely, but they wouldn't go after you personally. So to me, I thought that was pretty awesome.
Okay, I see.
Um, So that's one way to do it. Like I said, the loan to value, you're going to need 35% down if you're going to purchase properties like that. When you put it as a long-term rental, it will, any rent comes directly into your IRA and any expenses go directly out, but you can't personally benefit from it. And you also can't rent it to anyone in your linear familial tree. So your kids or your parents or your spouse. Let's hope that doesn't happen. But you could to your sisters, brothers, cousins, aunts, uncles. You just can't in the familial line. And you also can't pay yourself for any work that you do on the unit. It needs to go through a regular reputable company.
I see. So all of the, so all of the rent payments and how about the expenses, right?
The
Because
expenses come out too. So they won't ever take 100% of your IRA because you need to have a little $5,000 slush fund in case a furnace goes out or something like that. And so that money, of course, if it's in your IRA, it grows tax deferred. If you set it up with a Roth IRA, it grows without tax. So I'm actually in the process of transitioning mine right now since we have this COVID thing that I'm able to take $100,000 out of mine and transition and pay the taxes, but not the penalty, and transition that to a Roth. So anyway.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's certainly interesting, and I hadn't thought about that, but that's something to look into for sure. And I'm not sure if I had mentioned it to you earlier. I did just buy a house. I bought about 4 months ago, and looking at that, you just said that I need to have at least 35% down payment to be able to buy another house. What does the financing look like? Say
That's only for your IRA. We haven't got to the other kind yet.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I guess what I was just gonna mention was, so if the only loan I have right now, at least in the next couple of months, the only loan I'm gonna have is gonna be my mortgage payment. Would that, if I wanted to go to a bank and borrow money from the bank to buy this new house, how would that affect my credit? Because I know they say you need to have at least multiple credit lines in order to show that you're eligible for borrowing large sums of money. Do I need to go, get another loan to show that I don't know, that I have multiple lines,
No.
or just having it, my mortgage payment good enough?
A mortgage payment with a good track record of being paid on time, that will do a lot of good for you. So let's transition, and if there's no other questions about the IRA purchasing, we'll just transition to the traditional, which is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So on average, the majority of the loans require 20% down on an investment property.
Mm-hmm.
There are some that require 25% and they give you a much better interest rate. But generally speaking, they're 20%. There are also some, they're extremely hard to find, but there are some, I believe they're VA loan ones. And if you find one that's owned by someone that has a VA loan on it, which there's not an easy way to tell that, but if you found one of those, then there's a lower down payment on that loan. But there you go.
Yeah.
Just know it's out there. But if I could figure out how to do it, that would be awesome, because it's only I think it's 5 or 10% down. But generally speaking, 20% down for an investment property that you purchase. Your interest rates are going to be, we are buying one right now that's not in an IRA, and we're getting, again, I like 15-year loans. They don't cash flow as much or anything at first, but they get paid off very quickly. And with the appreciation that we've seen here in Colorado and the interest rate being low and paying less interest, it makes a lot of sense. However, on your first one, maybe you want to do a 30-year, since it's also going to depend on where you end up investing. And I'll talk to you more about the locations towards the end.
Yeah.
But right now I got a 15-year fixed at 3.25.
Okay.
We're purchasing a house here in Franktown on 2 acres for $425,000.
Okay.
And so we're putting, like I said, 20% down, and it's a super low interest rate. I'm really happy with it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
And so
Continue.
in that case, your rents, come in and out of whatever account you do. I highly recommend that you set up an LLC at the very least. And then after you get the loan on the property, so you purchase it in your own name. And then after that closes, you would then quit claim deed it to an LLC. And you'll have to set up a separate bank account for the LLC so that the renters, depending on how you're going to do it with a property manager or not, the renters would make their payments in and out of that account.
What was the term you used there? Quit close into the LLC?
Quit like quit smoking, QUIT,
Okay.
claim, CLAIM, deed, quit claim deed.
Okay. Got it.
Title companies can draw that up at closing, and you just would sign it and wait a week before you recorded it, and then and it would transfer the title. So in other words, you'd still be required to pay the loan, but the title of the property would be in the LLC's name.
Got it. Okay. This is this is good information. Did you have something, Ed?
Yeah, I got a quick question. So when you do your calculations to determine if a deal is acceptable to you, given the fact that you're going to put down 20%, say, with a 20% down payment, you want the rent coming in to be to give you how much elbow space by comparing to the mortgage payment. So are you breaking even, or are you slightly ahead? What do you like to see?
With my 15-year, I'd like to have at least an extra $100 a month in fluff, which it's a very slim margin. I'm going to share my spreadsheet with you. It is 7 pages long, so you'll be able to look at different scenarios on what makes sense. The average investor likes to see somewhere around 6%.
For a cap rate, is that what you're talking about?
I'm sorry?
The 6%, are you referring to a cap rate?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting because the research I was doing online said something about, you're going to have at least 55% of your rent go to maintenance and snowplow and fixing the house or whatever. After you pay,
55%?
it's it 45 to 55%. Yeah.
That may be in another market, not in Denver. So if you want, we can skip to the next stage, because that kind of general national information really applies to different markets. And here, Ed, I'll tell you, I don't even look at my spreadsheet anymore because everything here is so wacky. It doesn't fit the financial calculation models. And so it's almost just, well, it is. I mean, what I can get it for, what I have to put into it. So I add those two numbers together, and then what my down payment is, and what my monthly principal, interest, taxes, and insurance are going to be, plus HOA, if there is one, and what I can rent it for. And if there's a positive delta there, I'm good, because the market's it's just too hot to try to, and that's the other thing. We literally, I guess it's been 8 years ago now, I started an investment group, and we had so much inventory that I actually hired someone part-time to just go through all the, everything under $200,000 to plug it into these things to see what was really a good investment for us. And the reality is, if we'd have bought any of those properties 8 or 9 years ago, they would have over doubled in value. And there were a lot that we didn't because they didn't pencil. So if you're looking to buy in a super hot market like that, penciling, it's not going to happen as easily as it would if you were in a market like Tampa or Cleveland, or I have another resource I'm going to share with you for you to get some additional information if you wanted to invest outside of Colorado.
Yeah, I think right now it's mainly going to be inside of Colorado, just because from a property management standpoint, I'd like to, it's my first gig, I wouldn't want it to be remote and having to, just like you did, travel back and forth from California to go see the property. I'd like something that's, in the area that I can just drive to, and if there's maintenance required, I could do it myself, and sweat equity essentially. I don't think I'm going to have time to, I don't know, replace the siding or something on the house, but when it comes to winterizing the property, blow out the sprinkler system, things like that, I can just show up and an excuse, right, to see the property and sort of
Sure.
see how things are going. So I think that brings us to my next question is, how do I, so I live in Boulder County, and that's where I bought. And since I bought 4 months ago, the property is grown by 6%. I mean, it's projected to grow by 6% yearly, which is just crazy, right? We've made some money already. I mean, the valuation has actually grown, which is just, again, crazy, right? So I'd like to understand what the market looks like in Boulder County, close to where I am, so I can get to the property back and forth. How do I identify those kinds of property to make sure that I'm, like you just described, have that $100 upside after everything else is paid off?
Sure. So your county average sale price is going to be cost prohibitive to you, and I think unless you have someone else with financial banking, I mean, if this is your first one, my very first one that I bought was $80,000. And what I focused on, obviously I did that with my own houses, but then when I bought an investment property, it was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo, and it had an HOA fee. And I figured, well, the roof is taken care of, the siding is taken care of, and all the exterior maintenance is done, so it should not depreciate, other than the worst that someone could do is carpet and paint and appliances or countertops inside of it, right? Which shouldn't cost that much. So that would be my recommendation to you, is to focus on something that's a little more turnkey in that it has an HOA and it's not a single family home. It will also allow you to get into a price point that's more comfortable with less exposure.
Like that.
And then it has amenities that people like to rent. So people like pools and clubhouses and trails and parks, and you get that with those type of properties as well. And location.
Okay. So I think the key words here is turnkey, less exposure, and just something with great amenities, because that's what people like to rent.
Sure.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So I have some good friends that are in your market. I'm not sure if they specialize in investment properties or not, but I'd be glad to talk to them about that and recommend a local realtor that could help you if you wanted to see if that was available there. The easiest thing for you to do is to go on realtor.com or Zillow, search up your zip code, and sort from the cheapest to the most expensive and see what you find. And if the cheapest is $500,000 and you don't have $100,000 to put down, then you go to the next zip code and a little bit farther and a little bit farther, because you can drive anywhere once a month. You don't, it doesn't have to be around the corner from you.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, that's great advice. So I think this sort of just throws my initial thought out the door, because so I had mentioned to you that I recently got a new job, and I currently live in Longmont, and my new job is 30 minutes away, not so far. So I was searching at the back of my mind thinking, oh, maybe, if I end up buying a new property in that area, I could just rent out my house and use that as, but I think your advice to keep the exposure low, especially since my drive to work here isn't very far, and is a great advice, and I think that's what I'm going to go with. And
And you
so,
haven't lived there 2 of the last 5 years. So you'd get taxed on your appreciation anyway when you went to sell.
got it.
It doesn't
Well,
help you with that.
yeah, no, I wouldn't be selling this. It would just be buying a new property, moving into the new property, and then
Right.
renting this one out.
But I mean, well, in our case, you have 5 years to live in it, rent it, and sell it to not have to pay that capital gains. So on a higher end property, it would make sense for you to do that within the 5 years and save, $40,000 or whatever in taxes. The lower end stuff you probably wouldn't want to live in anyway, but
Okay. No, I absolutely agree with you. I think, going to less exposure is is great, especially, and that will give me an opportunity to learn the market as well and just get my feet wet before I start, spending so much. So, okay, that's great. Um, Ed, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. So when you invest in a particular piece of property, what is your end game? Are you typically looking, you're going to take this property full term and in 15 years it's going to be paid off and you're going to collect the income? Or if the market's really, you know, super rich, you just cash out of that property? What have you typically done, and what are you looking to do going forward?
so my philosophy changes a little bit as we progress into these different markets. Initially, my thought was that I was just going to buy it and hold it and pay it off and then keep it. When the properties double, it doesn't. So I have a mentor who is an investor, and he said that if I wouldn't buy it for that price today, then I should sell it and know where the money's going to go to, not that I'm just going to sell it and have the cash, which doesn't do anything but get 0.021% interest. Know where you're going to put it, what your next investment is, what's the next play. And so that is why I haven't transitioned all of mine out yet. The first one for 80,000 I resold for 160, and I bought two. And then one of those doubled. I sold that one, and I just sold the second one too. I just sold the second one this spring. So I have some single family homes now, and I have my office building that I purchased as a commercial thing. And so I'm using it to build up to things that are more useful, if you will. I have a really large family, and if someone ever needed to move into a house instead of a little 2-bedroom or 1-bedroom condo, I'd have something for them. And that was kind of a little bit of more of the change in my attitude and my thought process on that, is to make it something that is more usable for the people around me if needed.
Okay.
Do you think the market in Colorado affords opportunity for these types of appreciation?
So we are, 11 years, almost 11 years into a 7-year cycle. And I've been asking myself that question for the last 4 years. And every year it surprises me. So I can't pretend that I have a crystal ball or magic wand or anything like that. I do know that I read a lot from all of the economists to see what their opinions are, because they're much smarter than me about this kind of thing. And 93 or 94% of them still show appreciation for the state of Colorado. And the big reason, well, there's multiple reasons, but one of them is that we have a diversity of employment. So we have, there's the energy, there's the healthcare, there's obviously the pot industry. We've got tech coming here and here now. And so it's not like we just have everything in the food industry or everything in one specific sector, like the banking industry, like some states have. We're very disparate. And we also have very, very good colleges here that bring the talent that these companies need to run on. And until recently, we've had a very decent affordability. But that said, I believe that there are definitely still deals to be had. In the last year, I didn't think there were, and then I really had to get back to my plan and looking at my plan and start looking at these deals better, more analytically. Like I said, I kind of threw the spreadsheet out and started looking at the deals and less analytically and more, less dotting your I's, crossing your T's with the individual numbers, and more of the whole picture and holistically. which is why, like I said, I mean, I have a lot of clients that are, they buy and sell $1 million properties. And so one of the houses that I bought recently was, it was a really nice, 2-story brand new house with a walkout. And it was the most I'd ever spent on one. I think I paid $475 for it, but I sold these people's house for $1 million, and they had no place to go, and they got to move into my rental, and they're there. We have them under contract now, and it's been about 3 or 4 months, and then they're paying rent, and they're taking good care of the place. And so my business model has evolved. Whereas when I started, I had VAs, I had Section 8. If you're going to do Section 8 or VA, you need a property manager. It's brain damage. Don't do that. But now, I guess I'm getting more knowledge with and working within my life, instead of making it just like an investment thing that's kind of a set it and forget it on the side. Now it's part of my everyday life.
So if you were in Mac's shoes, you know, he's in his early 30s and he wants to get into real estate. What do you think would be the profile of a first property for investment for him? Would you, and let me just branch out to part B of that question. Would you, what's your gut feeling on residential versus commercial property?
I would not invest in commercial at all. This whole COVID thing it completely scared me away from commercial. I mean, every single employer is now not going back into work. So, and you can't even go to restaurants or at 25% capacity or whatever. So commercial, do not do that. Unless you had a business need. If you were going to, you know, like I did, I bought an office space because this is where I wanted to be.
Right, right. So your advice would be invest in a residential property, right?
Yes.
If Mac wanted to find a property in the $150,000 to $300,000, is that within reality?
Yes.
Currently, and what would he be able to do with that?
So he would, trying to think of some of the deals that I was kicking around early in the summer. We've had some newer townhomes. Newer, I say, 10 years old is newer to us. And they were selling, right around 330, and they had 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, and they would rent for $2,200-$2,300 a month. And their HOA fees were $275. And they had a pool and a dog park and a clubhouse and lots of trails. Taxes on those, probably about maybe $1,500 a year in taxes, maybe $150 a month in taxes.
Okay, so it cash flowed nicely with a 20% down payment?
It did.
Is the 20% down payment what you were referring to as using your IRA? Say if you
need 35% down for an IRA.
Okay, so and the loan to, obviously if you've got $100,000 in an IRA, they're not going to lend you to up to 100% of that value. There will be some sort of ratio.
No, actually they do. So I bought an $80,000 condo. I only had $30,000 in my IRA. It's no different than you buying a house, right? I mean, who could write a check for the price of their house? And they're gambling that you're going to make it happen. Same thing.
Right.
Just go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, just so I get a better understanding, and I'll go back and research this further after this conversation. But so, say for example, I have $100,000 in my traditional IRA, and I'm looking to get a 35. Well, that 35%, is that going to be withdrawn by the bank, or is this just gonna, okay, it's just gonna take it out by the bank, right? Okay,
Well, it's going to be taken out. You're going to wire that. Your custodian for your IRA will wire it to the title company for closing,
got it.
because that part's going to go to the seller, and then the loan from the bank is going to go to the seller.
Yeah,
The
So
title.
and obviously,
the actual cash value is withdrawn from the IRA as opposed to
The down
a total-
payment, not the cash value. The down
okay,
payment is withdrawn from the IRA. That is correct. It's
Yeah.
called a self-directed IRA. So you can actually direct them to help your neighbor buy a car, and you could give a loan to your neighbor for 1.9% instead of 7.9% from your IRA with a self-directed IRA. It's not just limited to real estate. That's just one of the ways you can do that.
okay. And obviously, the downside of doing so would be that you're not, if the market is doing 7 to 10% and your house is appreciating at 2%, you're not, you're losing all of that gain, right? If you had remained in the market, right?
Oh, right. Yes, true.
But obviously this, you're playing the long game, which you could try to, figure out what that means for you with your strategy and going into the real estate market. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know about that. Yeah, we'll see. My initial thought was that I was, going to do the down payment, go the down payment route, and for the second home, when I'm ready, which I think is going to happen here, early to mid next year. Depending on how much a house ends up costing.
Sure.
And with the condo idea that you brought up, I think it's actually just really smart, because you're buying like you said, turnkey. You wouldn't have to do much maintenance. There's some HOA, and the apartment complex, I imagine, or the condo complex is going to take care of a lot of the grooming and keeping the outside where it needs to be, and it would just be cost on, say, the heater goes out, maybe you need to take care of that and things like that.
Sure. And you don't want a middle unit.
Just
You
in terms
only
of
want
maintenance fee,
a
right?
top or a bottom level condo, not a middle.
Top or bottom.
Because the middle has the noise from above?
Yeah, no one wants to be sandwiched in there.
Okay.
So from this conversation,
My first preference is the ground floor, but it's always going to cost you more. Ground floors are appealing to more different types of renters.
Okay.
okay.
Especially if they have little children or elderly
Or even if they
Yeah.
just blew out a knee, going up 3 flights of stairs with your groceries every day.
I get it.
Oh, I see. So you can get sued.
No,
But
you can't get sued. I'm just saying that like if you get injured, you're playing soccer and you're old and you don't properly stretch and you injure your knee and your apartment is on the 3rd floor, you're going to want out of that lease because you can't get up and down those stairs.
makes sense. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, this has been very helpful. You said you're going to send the calculation.
Yeah, I'll send you the spreadsheet with the calculations. It's got, I guess it's only 5 pages. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it should answer most of your questions, and it should help you with that.
Is there any particular area that you would direct an investor to?
Something near public transit, light rail, and certainly in town or walking distance to groceries, not groceries, but restaurants and things like that. Those ones, for that type of a property, they want something that's convenient. Remember, these are the renters that renters generally want convenience. Even more so than price. A lot of them, if it's convenient, will pay more because they don't want to have to drive and they want to be right there by their friends or their work in the happy hours and whatever.
When you said that, I thought about where I used to live before we moved here. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. It's in Superior. It's called Bell Flatirons.
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay, yeah. So we lived there, and it was, right next to the light rail. Very, I guess the bus station. Really nice property. I'm not sure if they sell there, but if you were looking, would you look at that property to see?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And
got
I'd
nice.
look within 5 miles of it.
Okay, within 5 miles of it.
It
All
doesn't
right.
have to be right there, but within 5 miles.
Okay, yeah. I with this conversation and obviously the spreadsheet that you're graciously going to share with us, I think that I'll continue to look, and well, I guess my question for you would be, how early should I start looking, given that I know that my numbers are going to come in, around the early to mid next year, if I go with the traditional financing route.
Sure. I would tell you to start looking now because you need to identify areas. And some of the best things that you can do is drive by the area just after 5 p.m. when people are home from work. And you'll see what's going on there, what the demographic is, who lives there. Is it, are there like a whole bunch of kids in the neighborhood? Is it generally older people? Um, and then you know what kind of unit to buy. So if you go, I'm not telling you to like racially profile anyone. I'm just telling you that if you go to a neighborhood that is close to this kind of thing and you get there and you see that there's like 1 million kids there, then you should probably buy at least a 2 bedroom because that's the people that's renting there. Or if you see there's a lot of older people there, you definitely want a ground floor, stay away from the third floor. So those are just some
Sure.
nuances that I've learned over the years.
Is
Okay.
there information that's accessible electronically that shows the movement of people? Like say, for instance, over the last year in this particular zip code, there has been 500 families that moved in here, and the projection is for that to double. Is there such a thing, or do you have to have feet on the ground and you have to get a feel from what you see as opposed to data? What's your experience with that?
How I will tell you, there's a website I'm trying to find for you right now. How Money Walks. HOW. Let me put it in the chat box here. Maybe it'll let me. HowMoneyWalks.com has some information on